My parents said they were too tired to come to my graduation. But they posted photos with my baby brother at Disneyland. I didn't say anything, until my name was called for valedictorian. I looked into the camera and said, to everyone who didn't show up, this one's for you. 2 hours later, my brother and my parents were crying in the parking lot. The parking lot was chaos. My mother's mascara had bled down her cheeks in black tributaries, and she was clutching her phone like it might save her life. Dad stood frozen beside their rental car, a gleaming white SUV that still had Mickey Mouse ears hanging from the rearview mirror. And Kyle, my 23-year-old baby brother, was hunched over the hood, dry heaving like he'd just run a marathon. Sophia, please, Mom whispered into the phone. We can explain everything? We're driving back right now. We'll be there in 4 hours. I ended the call. Let me back up. Let me tell you how we got here, because the story doesn't start with them crying. It starts with me, 3 weeks ago, standing in my dorm room at Berkeley, staring at a text message that would change everything. Mom, Soph, honey, your dad and I are absolutely exhausted from work. We've been pulling 60-hour weeks for months. We're going to skip graduation, you understand, right? You're so independent, we know you'll be fine without us there. Love you. I read it twice. Then 3 times. You understand, right? I set the phone down on my desk, next to the acceptance letter from Harvard Law School and the thank you cards I'd been writing to professors. My hands weren't shaking. They should have been, but they weren't. I felt empty. Like someone had scooped out my insides with a spoon. My roommate Clara poked her head through the door. Everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. My parents aren't coming to graduation. What? She stepped fully into the room, her face twisting with disbelief. But you're valedictorian. You're giving the speech. They're not coming to see their daughter graduate summa cum laude from Berkeley? They're tired. The word tasted bitter. Tired. Like I was some optional weekend activity they could skip. Like the last 4 years, the sleepless nights, the research projects, the academic awards, the full scholarship I'd earned, meant nothing. Clara sat on my bed, studying my face. Soph, I've known you for 3 years. I've seen you handle organic chemistry finals and constitutional law debates and that horrible food poisoning from the dining hall sushi. You never cry. But you look like you're about to break. I wasn't going to break. I was going to do something else entirely. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times they'd shown up for Kyle, and all the times they hadn't shown up for me. Kyle's high school graduation, when he barely scraped by with a 2.3 GPA, front row, professional photographer, dinner at the country club afterward. My high school graduation, where I was salutatorian, we'll try to make it, sweetie, but Kyle has that baseball tournament in Sacramento. Kyle's community college graduation, after he'd spent 2 years taking remedial classes and smoking weed behind the library, champagne celebration, Facebook posts about their amazing son. My acceptance to Berkeley with a full academic scholarship, that's nice, dear. Can you help Kyle fill out his financial aid forms? Kyle's 21st birthday, surprise party, rented hall, 200 guests. My 21st birthday, dinner at Olive Garden with Kyle complaining about the breadsticks. I grabbed my laptop and opened Facebook. There they were, Mom's recent posts, chronicling their week-long vacation in Southern California. Kyle at the Santa Monica Pier, grinning and holding cotton candy. Dad and Kyle on the Malibu beach, building sandcastles like Kyle was still 7 years old instead of 23. Kyle at In-N-Out Burger, making an exaggerated surprised face at the camera. And then, posted just 6 hours ago, Kyle at Disneyland, wearing mouse ears and posing with Goofy. Having the best time with our baby boy. He needed this after his stressful semester at community college. Sometimes you just have to drop everything and focus on family. Hashtag Disney Magic, hashtag Proud Parents, hashtag Family First. I stared at that post for 20 minutes. Kyle's stressful semester had consisted of 3 classes, Intro to Business, Beginning Spanish, and something called Life Skills for Success. I'd seen his transcript when he'd asked me to help him calculate his GPA. He'd gotten 2 B's and a C+. Meanwhile, I was graduating with a 3.97 GPA, double majoring in political science and philosophy, and I'd just been accepted to Harvard Law School with a partial scholarship. But they were too tired to drive 4 hours to see me walk across the stage. I closed the laptop and made a decision. The next morning, I called the graduation committee. Hi, this is Sophia Martinez. I'm the valedictorian for this year's ceremony, and I had a question about the speech. Of course, Sophia. What can we help you with? I know we submitted the final draft last week, but I'd like to make some minor revisions. Nothing major, just a few personal touches to make it more meaningful. That should be fine, as long as you get us the updated version by Friday. Will it change the length significantly? No, it'll be about the same. Maybe a little shorter, actually. Perfect. We're so excited to hear it. Your original draft was beautiful. We're sure whatever changes you make will only improve it. If only they knew. I spent the next week crafting something special. The speech started exactly the same: inspirational quotes about perseverance, acknowledgments of professors and staff, reflections on our journey as a graduating class. But I added a new section, right at the end. A section that would change everything. The original ending had been generic: as we leave this institution and enter the world, let us remember that success is not just about personal achievement, but about the people who believed in us along the way. The new ending was different. Clara read it over my shoulder on Thursday night. Oh my, Soph. Are you sure about this? I'm sure. This is nuclear. This is going to burn bridges. Good. Some bridges deserve to burn. She was quiet for a long moment. For what it's worth, I think they deserve it. And I'm proud of you. Graduation day arrived with perfect California sunshine. I woke up at 6 a.m., showered, and put on the dress I'd bought specifically for this moment, a simple black sheath that made me look older, more authoritative. I did my makeup carefully, paying special attention to my eyes. I wanted to look strong. Unbreakable. Clara helped me with the graduation gown and took pictures of me in our dorm room. You look like you're about to conquer the world, she said. I am. I checked my phone one last time. No messages from my parents. Kyle had posted another Disney photo 20 minutes ago, him and Mickey Mouse giving thumbs up. The caption read, "Living my best life. Thanks Mom and Dad for the amazing week. #blessed #family time." I turned off my phone and slipped it into my purse. The ceremony was held in the outdoor amphitheater, with families filling the stone seats that cascaded down toward the stage. I sat in the front row with the other honor students, scanning the crowd. Clara had saved seats for my parents, even though I'd told her not to bother. The empty chairs sat there like missing teeth. My friend Marcus, who was graduating magna cum laude, leaned over and whispered, "Where are your folks?" "Disneyland." He thought I was joking. He laughed, then saw my face and stopped. "Wait, seriously?" I didn't answer. The ceremony began with the usual pomp: processional music, welcome speeches, the dean's remarks about our bright futures. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap, reading steadily. I felt like a bomb with a very long fuse, counting down to detonation. Then came the awards ceremony. Academic achievements, leadership recognition, research honors. I walked across the stage 4 times, shaking hands with administrators who smiled and congratulated me. Each time, I glanced at those empty seats. Each time, I felt the fuse burn a little shorter. Finally, the dean approached the podium for the introduction I'd been waiting for. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to present this year's valedictorian. Sophia Martinez has maintained a 3.97 GPA while double majoring in political science and philosophy. She has been accepted to Harvard Law School, where she will begin in the fall. She has served as president of the mock trial team, captain of the debate squad, and volunteer coordinator for our campus legal aid clinic. Please join me in welcoming Sophia Martinez to deliver our commencement address." The applause was thunderous. I stood, smoothed my gown, and walked to the podium with steady steps. The microphone was already adjusted to my height. I tested it during rehearsal yesterday. I looked out at the sea of faces. Faculty in the front, graduates in the middle, families in the back. Cell phones were raised like tiny suns, recording this moment for posterity. The campus live stream camera was pointed directly at me, broadcasting to anyone who wanted to watch online. Perfect. Fellow graduates, faculty, family, and friends, I began, my voice clear and strong. 4 years ago, we arrived at this institution as uncertain 18-year-olds, armed with little more than hope and determination. Today, we leave as educated, capable adults, ready to change the world. The speech flowed exactly as I'd practiced. I talked about late nights in the library, professors who challenged us, friendships that had sustained us through difficult times. The crowd was engaged, nodding along, occasionally laughing at the gentle jokes I'd inserted. But then I reached the part they weren't expecting. "As we leave this institution and enter the world," I said, pausing to make eye contact with the camera, "I want to talk about the people who shape us. Not just the professors who teach us, or the friends who support us, but also the people who teach us about resilience by their absence." A subtle shift in the audience. Some parents straightening in their seats, sensing a change in tone. I want to talk about the people who show us, through their choices, what truly matters to them. Who teach us that sometimes, we have to celebrate our victories alone. Who help us understand that family isn't just about blood, it's about showing up. The camera was still rolling. Somewhere, people were watching this live. Maybe my parents. Maybe Kyle. Maybe not. Some of you have family here today, cheering you on, sharing in this moment of triumph. Some of you, like me, have family who chose to be somewhere else. And that's okay. Because today, I learned something important. I gripped the podium, feeling the weight of this moment. I learned that the people who truly love you don't need to be asked to show up. They don't need to be convinced that your achievements matter. They don't choose Disney trips over their daughter's graduation because they're too tired to drive 4 hours to celebrate 4 years of hard work. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the typical graduation speech anymore. I learned that some people will always have excuses for their absence, but never explanations for their presence. And I learned that when someone shows you who they are, you should believe them the first time. My voice was steady, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. So today, as I accept this diploma, as I graduate summa cum laude, as I prepare to attend Harvard Law School in the fall, I want to say something directly to the people who couldn't make it here today. I looked directly into the camera, imagining my parents watching from their hotel room, Kyle pausing mid-bite of his room service breakfast. This achievement belongs to me. And to the people who showed up. To my professors who believed in me. To my friends who celebrated my victories and held me through my failures. To the mentors who wrote recommendation letters and the advisors who guided me toward my dreams. The amphitheater was completely silent now. Even the birds seemed to be holding their breath. But most importantly, this achievement belongs to everyone who understands that love is a verb, not just a feeling. That support means showing up, not just sending texts with heart emojis. That family means being present for the moments that matter. I paused, savoring the weight of what came next. So to everyone who didn't show up today, to everyone who chose Mickey Mouse over their daughter's once-in-a-lifetime moment, this one's for you. This is what you missed. This is what you chose not to be part of. And this is what I accomplished without you. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then, slowly, applause began. First from Clara, then from Marcus, then from my entire row of fellow graduates. It spread backward through the amphitheater like wildfire, until the entire crowd was on their feet, cheering. But I wasn't finished. In closing, I want to say this to my fellow graduates: we don't need people to believe in us to succeed. We don't need anyone's permission to be extraordinary. We don't need anyone's presence to validate our worth. Today, we celebrate ourselves. Today, we honor our own hard work. Today, we choose to be proud of who we've become, with or without the people who were supposed to cheer us on. I stepped back from the podium as the applause erupted again, louder this time. The dean approached to shake my hand, his eyes wide with surprise and something that might have been admiration. As I walked back to my seat, my phone, which I'd left on silent in my purse, began buzzing like an angry wasp. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. Diploma presentations, the turning of tassels, the traditional cap toss. I went through the motions, shaking hands and smiling for photos, but my mind was elsewhere. What had I just done? The magnitude of it was starting to hit me. I'd just delivered a public evisceration of my family to several thousand people, plus anyone watching the live stream. I'd burned the bridge, doused it in gasoline, and thrown a match on the ashes. But here's the thing, I didn't regret it. Not even a little bit. Clara grabbed my arm as we filed out of the amphitheater. Oh my gosh, Soph. That was incredible. And terrifying. But mostly incredible. My phone's been buzzing nonstop, I said, pulling it out of my purse. 43 missed calls. 67 text messages. The notifications kept coming. Kyle, what the crap, Sophia? Kyle, Mom is crying. Kyle, Dad wants to talk to you. Kyle, this is so messed up. Mom, Sophia, please call me. Mom, we're driving back right now. Mom, please let us explain. Mom, we love you. Dad, that was completely inappropriate. Dad, we need to have a serious conversation. Dad, you embarrassed our entire family. I scrolled through them all, feeling strangely detached. Like I was reading someone else's drama. But then I saw the other messages. The ones from people I hadn't heard from in years. High school friend Jessica, oh my. I just watched your graduation speech online. You are my hero. Cousin Maria, girl, that speech is going viral. I'm so proud of you, Professor Williams. Sophia, that was the most honest and powerful commencement address I've heard in 25 years of education. Random number, I don't know you, but your graduation speech just showed up on my TikTok and I'm literally crying. Thank you for saying what so many of us needed to hear. It's going viral, I said to Clara, showing her my phone. Of course it is. You just delivered the most savage graduation speech in internet history. People are going to be talking about this for years. We walked toward the reception area, where families were taking pictures and sharing congratulations. I could see my empty celebration table in the distance. Clara had reserved it optimistically, thinking my parents might surprise me at the last minute. That's when I saw them. Mom spotted me first. She was half running across the quad, her face blotchy from crying, still wearing the Disneyland t-shirt she probably slept in. Dad was behind her, his face stormy with anger and embarrassment. And Kyle, bringing up the rear, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Sophia. Mom called out, loud enough to turn heads. Sophia, wait. I stopped walking. Clara stepped closer to me, protective. We drove straight through, Mom said, reaching me and immediately trying to pull me into a hug. 4 hours without stopping. We came as soon as we could. I stepped back, avoiding her embrace. You came as soon as you watched the live stream, you mean? Honey, let us explain. No. My voice was calm, controlled. You don't get to explain. You get to listen. Dad stepped forward, his jaw tight. Sophia, what you did up there was cruel and unnecessary. We raised you better than that. Did you? I asked. Because from where I stand, you raised Kyle. You showed up for Kyle. You celebrated Kyle. You chose Kyle. Again and again and again. That's not true. Kyle's high school graduation. You hired a photographer. Dad's mouth opened, then closed. Kyle's 21st birthday. You rented a hall. Mom was crying again, but quietly now. Kyle's community college graduation, after he barely scraped together enough credits. You threw a party. Sophia, Kyle started to speak, but I cut him off. My Berkeley acceptance. My full scholarship. My summa cum laude. My Harvard acceptance. My valedictorian speech. And you're at Disneyland, posting pictures of your baby boy eating churros. The quad around us had gotten quiet. Other families were pretending not to listen, but they were definitely listening. We were going to surprise you, Mom whispered. We were going to drive up after Kyle's vacation. Stop. I held out my hand. Just stop lying. You weren't going to surprise me. You were going to keep choosing him over me, like you always do. And you know what? I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt. We love you, Dad said, but his voice lacked conviction. No. You love the idea of me. You love telling people your daughter goes to Harvard Law. You love the reflected glory. But you don't love me enough to show up. Kyle stepped forward, his face flushed. This is crap, Sophia. You're being dramatic. We're family. Are we? I looked at him, really looked at him. This 23-year-old man-child who had never worked a day in his life, who had never had to compete for our parents' attention, who had never been asked to understand that love should be mutual. Because family shows up for each other. Family celebrates each other's victories. Family doesn't choose Disney World over their daughter's graduation. You don't understand, Kyle said. I've been really stressed. Stressed about what? Your 3 community college classes? Your weekend job at GameStop that Dad got you through a friend? Your rent-free apartment that Mom pays for? His face crumpled. For a moment, he looked exactly like the child he'd always been allowed to remain. I needed this vacation, he said quietly. I've been struggling. We're all struggling, I said. The difference is, some of us struggle alone. The conversation might have continued, but suddenly we were surrounded. A small crowd had formed, other graduates, family members, even some faculty. Everyone had their phones out, recording this impromptu family drama. This is a private conversation, Dad said sharply to the onlookers, but nobody moved. Nothing's private anymore, Dad. You should know that. My speech already has 50,000 views on YouTube. Mom gasped. 50,000? 63,000, Claire corrected, checking her phone. And climbing. I turned to my parents and brother, seeing them clearly for maybe the first time in my life. Mom, desperate and manipulative, using tears as weapons. Dad, angry and embarrassed that his family's dysfunction was being aired publicly. Kyle, confused and hurt that the world didn't revolve around him for 5 minutes. And me. Standing in my graduation gown, feeling lighter than I had in years. I'm going to Harvard in the fall, I said calmly. I'm going to become a lawyer. I'm going to build a life filled with people who show up for me. And you can be part of that life, or you can keep choosing each other over me. But I'm done begging for scraps of your attention. Sophia, please, Mom started. I'm done, I repeated. I love you. I will always love you. But I'm done arranging my life around your disappointments. I turned to walk away, but Kyle grabbed my arm. Wait, he said. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't realize. For a moment, I saw something genuine in his face. Something that might have been the beginning of understanding. Kyle, I said gently, you're 23 years old. You can't keep letting them treat you like a child, and I can't keep pretending it doesn't affect me. But we're family. Yes. We are. And maybe someday we can figure out what that means. I pulled free from his grip and walked away, Clara beside me. Behind us, I could hear Mom crying and Dad trying to calm her down. I could hear Kyle asking confused questions about what had just happened, like he'd woken up from a long dream. But I didn't turn around. The reception was awkward, but in a good way. People kept approaching me, congratulating me not just on my academic achievements but on my speech. Professors I barely knew shook my hand and told me I'd spoken truth to power. Other students shared their own stories of family disappointment and absent parents. You said what we've all been thinking, one girl told me. My parents missed my graduation because they had to work, but they took a week off for my sister's wedding shower. My dad has never missed one of my brother's football games, said another, but he's never been to any of my academic competitions. I realized I wasn't alone in this. There were dozens of us, maybe hundreds, walking around with the same wound. The wound of being the responsible one, the achieving one, the one who didn't need as much attention because we were fine on our own. But here's what I learned that day: being fine on your own and deserving support aren't mutually exclusive. 3 hours later, I was in my dorm room, packing the last of my belongings, when my phone rang. It was an unknown number with a Los Angeles area code. Is this Sophia Martinez? Yes. This is Jennifer Walsh from Good Morning America. We'd love to have you on the show to discuss your graduation speech. Are you available to talk? I almost laughed. I'm sorry, what? Your speech has been viewed over 200,000 times since this morning. It's trending on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. People are calling it the most honest graduation speech ever given. We'd love to interview you about the response you've gotten. 200,000 views. I sat down hard on my bed. Can I call you back? I asked. Of course. But we'd love to get you on tomorrow's show if possible. This kind of viral moment doesn't last long. After I hung up, I called Clara, who was packing in her own room down the hall. Good Morning America wants to interview me. Crap. Are you going to do it? I looked around my dorm room, at the empty walls where my achievement certificates had hung, at the boxes packed with 4 years of hard work and memories. Yeah, I said. I think I am. That night, I got one more call. It was Kyle, and he sounded different. Quieter. Soph? Can we talk? I'm listening. I watched your speech. The whole thing. And I read some of the comments online. I waited. I never realized, he said. I mean, I knew Mom and Dad were protective of me. But I didn't know they were. That they weren't showing up for you. Kyle, no, let me finish. I looked back at all the Facebook posts. All the pictures. All the celebrations. And you're right, it's all me. It's always been all me. And I let it happen because it felt good to be the favorite. His voice cracked on the last word. But you're the one who deserved the celebration. You're the one who earned it. And I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. I was quiet for a long time. Thank you, I said finally. That means a lot. Can we try to fix this? Our family, I mean. Can we try to figure out how to be better? I don't know, I said honestly. But I'm willing to try if you are. I am. And Soph? I'm proud of you. I should have said that a long time ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of you. After we hung up, I cried for the first time since this whole thing started. Not from sadness, but from relief. Like a pressure valve had finally been released. The Good Morning America interview aired 2 days later. Jennifer Walsh was professional but warm, asking thoughtful questions about family dynamics and academic pressure. I talked about the difference between loving someone and supporting them, about how absence can be its own form of communication. What would you say to parents watching right now who might recognize themselves in your story? She asked. I'd say it's not too late, I answered. It's never too late to start showing up. But don't show up because your child called you out publicly. Show up because you love them. Show up because their victories deserve to be celebrated. Show up because presence is the greatest gift you can give someone you love. The interview generated another wave of attention. Think pieces about helicopter parenting and academic achievement culture. Op-eds about family favoritism and sibling dynamics. My inbox filled with messages from other students sharing their own stories. But the message that mattered most came from my mother, 3 days after the interview aired. Mom, I watched your interview. You were right about everything. I'm sorry I failed you. I'm sorry I chose comfort over courage. I'm sorry I let you think you weren't worth showing up for. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I want to try to do better. I love you. I stared at that message for a long time before responding. Me, I love you too. Let's start there. Harvard Law School orientation was 6 weeks later. I moved into my apartment in Cambridge on a Tuesday, surrounded by boxes and the nervous excitement of a new chapter. My parents drove up from California for the weekend. Both of them. They helped me unpack, took me to dinner, walked around campus with me like tourists. It was awkward sometimes. We were all trying to figure out how to be a family that actually shows up for each other, but it was a start. Kyle flew out for a weekend visit a month into the semester. He'd enrolled in a full course load at community college and gotten a second job. I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not the family baby, he told me over coffee in Harvard Square. It's harder than it looks, I said. Yeah, but it's better too. We were sitting in a cafe near campus, watching law students hurry past with armloads of casebooks. Everything felt different now. Not perfect, we were all still learning how to be the people we wanted to be instead of the people we'd always been. But different in a good way. Do you ever regret it? Kyle asked. The speech, I mean. Going nuclear like that? I thought about it. The speech had changed everything, not just for my family, but for me. I'd learned something about my own power, about the weight of speaking truth even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. No, I said. I regret that it had to happen. I regret that 22 years of smaller conversations didn't work. But I don't regret finally telling the truth. Kyle nodded. It was the right thing to do. Even if it hurt. Sometimes the right thing is the thing that hurts. 2 years later, I'm halfway through law school and clerking at a legal aid clinic in Boston. My parents come to visit twice a semester, and Kyle calls me every Sunday. We're not the family we were, but we're not the family we used to be either. We're something new, something more intentional. But here's the thing nobody tells you about moments like my graduation speech: they echo. That video is still out there, still being shared, still finding people who need to hear that their achievements matter even when nobody shows up to celebrate them. I get messages all the time, from students whose parents miss their concerts, from athletes whose families skip their games, from kids who feel invisible in their own homes. They tell me my speech gave them permission to be angry about the absences in their lives. They tell me it helped them understand that love should be active, not passive. And sometimes I get messages from parents who recognize themselves in my story and decided to change. Parents who started showing up. Parents who realize that supporting their children shouldn't be conditional on convenience. Those messages mean the most. But there's one message I've never gotten, one conversation I've never had. And that's with the people who are still choosing Mickey Mouse over their children's milestones. The parents who watched my speech and felt justified in their absence instead of motivated to change. The families who are still trapped in the same patterns of favoritism and neglect. I think about them sometimes. I wonder if they'll figure it out before it's too late, or if their children will have to give their own graduation speeches to empty chairs. I hope they figure it out, but if they don't, I hope their children know what I learned that day on the stage: you don't need anyone's permission to be proud of yourself. You don't need anyone's presence to validate your worth. You don't need anyone to show up in order to celebrate your own victories. Sometimes the people who love you will disappoint you. Sometimes the people who are supposed to cheer the loudest will be silent. Sometimes you'll have to be your own advocate, your own champion, your own celebration. And that's okay. Because the most important person who can show up for your life is you. But here's the thing that still keeps me up at night sometimes: what if they had come? What if my parents had skipped Disneyland and driven those 4 hours to watch me graduate? What if they had been in those empty seats, cheering when my name was called, crying proud tears during my speech? Would I have been brave enough to tell the truth about all the other times they didn't show up? Would I have found my voice if I hadn't been forced to use it? I'll never know. And maybe that's the real point: sometimes the people who hurt us also teach us who we're capable of becoming. Sometimes the absence teaches us more than the presence ever could. My parents show up now. Kyle is learning to be his own person. Our family is healing, slowly and imperfectly. But that speech is still out there, echoing through the internet, reaching people who need to hear it. And sometimes I think that's the most important thing I've ever done, not just for myself, but for all the invisible children who are tired of celebrating alone. The parking lot is empty now. The graduation caps have been thrown and collected. The families have gone home to dinner celebrations and photo albums. But somewhere, a student is opening their laptop and typing graduation speech absent parents into YouTube. Someone is watching that video and realizing they're not alone. Someone is learning that love should be a verb, not just a feeling. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere else, a parent is watching that same video and deciding to show up next time. That's the thread I'm leaving you with, the thing that lingers after the story ends. Change is possible. People can learn. Families can heal. But it has to start with someone being brave enough to tell the truth. Even if they have to do it alone. Except I wasn't alone. Not really. And that's the part of the story I haven't told you yet. 3 months after Harvard started, I got a call that changed everything again. It was from a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, a family therapist in San Francisco who specialized in what she called achievement-based family dysfunction. "Ms. Martinez," she said, "I hope you don't mind me reaching out directly. I got your number from your mother." My stomach dropped. "My mother's in therapy?" "Your whole family is. They started coming to see me 2 weeks after your graduation speech went viral. They've been working very hard to understand the patterns that led to that moment." I was quiet, processing this information. "The reason I'm calling is that they've asked me to invite you to participate in some family sessions. But before I extended that invitation, I wanted to talk to you privately about what that might look like." "What are they saying in therapy?" I asked. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. "They're saying a lot of things they should have said years ago. Your mother is particularly devastated isn't too strong a word. She's been going through old photo albums, old report cards, old award ceremonies. She's making a timeline of all the moments she missed or minimized." "And my dad?" "Your father is struggling with the public nature of what happened. He's embarrassed, yes, but he's also starting to understand why you felt you had no other choice. He's been reading articles about emotional neglect and conditional love. It's been eye-opening for him." "What about Kyle?" Kyle is probably making the most progress. He started therapy on his own, separate from the family sessions. He's dealing with what he calls survivor's guilt, the guilt of being the chosen child in a system that neglected you. I was sitting in my tiny Harvard apartment, law school textbooks spread across my kitchen table, trying to process the idea that my family was dissecting our dysfunction with a professional. They want to make amends, Dr. Chen continued. Real amends. Not just apologies, but behavioral changes. Your mother has started therapy specifically focused on why she favored your brother. Your father is working on emotional availability. And Kyle is learning to set boundaries with your parents so they can't continue to infantilize him. How do I know this isn't just them trying to repair their public image? I asked. The video has been seen by millions of people now. My family's dysfunction is basically a meme. That's a fair question. And honestly, the public embarrassment was probably the catalyst for them seeking help. But what I'm seeing in our sessions isn't performance, it's genuine grief. They're mourning the daughter they lost through their own neglect, and they're terrified they've lost you permanently. I stared out my window at Harvard Yard, watching students hurry between classes with their heavy backpacks and determined expressions. Everyone here was someone's achievement story. Everyone here had pushed themselves to excellence. But how many of us had families who actually celebrated that excellence? What would family therapy look like? I asked. It would mean coming to San Francisco for winter break. 3 intensive sessions over a week. We'd work through specific incidents, not just your graduation, but years of patterns. Your parents would have to hear, really hear, how their favoritism affected you. Kyle would have to grapple with his role in accepting that favoritism. And you would have to decide if you're willing to forgive them enough to rebuild a relationship. What if I'm not ready to forgive them? Then you're not ready. Forgiveness can't be rushed or forced. But I will say this, the work they're doing isn't contingent on your participation. They're changing because they want to change, not because they're trying to manipulate you into coming back. After we hung up, I called Clara. She was in her first year of graduate school at Stanford, studying social work. Family therapy sounds intense, she said when I finished explaining the call. I'm terrified, I admitted. What if I go and nothing changes? What if I go and I realize I can't forgive them? What if I go and it's just more of the same crap? What if you go and it's actually healing? Clara countered. What if your speech didn't just go viral? What if it actually saved your family? I decided to go to San Francisco for winter break, but I set conditions. I would stay in a hotel, not at my parents' house. I would attend the therapy sessions, but I wasn't promising anything beyond that. And if at any point I felt manipulated or gaslit, I was getting on a plane back to Boston. The first session was scheduled for December 27th, 2 days after Christmas. I flew in on Christmas Day, deliberately avoiding any family celebrations. I needed to approach this with a clear head, not clouded by holiday emotions. Dr. Chen's office was in a converted Victorian house in the Mission District, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs arranged in a circle. When I walked in, my family was already there, Mom, Dad, and Kyle, all looking nervous and smaller than I remembered. Sophia, Dr. Chen said warmly, thank you for coming. Why don't you take whichever seat feels comfortable to you? I chose the chair directly across from my parents, with Kyle to my left. I wanted to see their faces clearly. Before we begin, Dr. Chen said, I want to establish some ground rules. This is a safe space, which means we speak honestly but respectfully. We listen without interrupting. And we take responsibility for our own actions without deflecting or making excuses. She looked at each of us in turn. Sophia, would you like to start by telling your family how you're feeling about being here? I took a deep breath. I'm angry, I said. I'm angry that it took a viral video for you to take my feelings seriously. I'm angry that we're sitting here because I publicly embarrassed you, not because you privately realized you've been hurting me for years. And I'm scared that this is just damage control, that you're going through the motions of therapy so you can tell people you're working on it. Mom started to cry immediately. Dad's jaw tightened. Kyle looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. Mom, I continued, you're crying, and part of me wants to comfort you like I always do. But I can't be responsible for managing your emotions about the consequences of your own actions. Sophia's right, Dr. Chen said gently. Mrs. Martinez, can you sit with your feelings without asking Sophia to take care of them? Mom nodded, wiping her eyes. I'm sorry. You're right. I always did that, made you take care of my feelings instead of the other way around. It was a small moment, but it was the first time I'd heard my mother acknowledge that specific pattern. Mr. Martinez, Dr. Chen turned to my father, how are you feeling right now? Defensive, Dad said bluntly. And ashamed. I keep wanting to explain why we made the choices we made, but I'm realizing that our reasons don't matter. The impact on Sophia is what matters. That was unexpected. Dad had always been the explainer, the justifier. Hearing him acknowledge that his reasons weren't the point felt like a small breakthrough. Kyle, Dr. Chen said, what's coming up for you? Kyle was quiet for a long time. Guilt, he said finally. And confusion. I spent my whole life thinking I was just loved more. I didn't realize that love was being taken away from Sophia to be given to me. I thought there was enough for both of us. Love isn't finite, Dr. Chen said. But attention and support can be. When parents consistently give more attention and support to one child, the other child experiences that as a withdrawal of love, even if that wasn't a conscious intention. She turned back to me. Sophia, what would it look like for you to feel truly supported by your family? I'd been thinking about this question for months, ever since the graduation speech. I would need to feel like my achievements matter to you as much as Kyle's do. I would need you to show up without being asked. I would need you to celebrate my victories without immediately pivoting to Kyle's needs. And I would need you to understand that emotional support isn't just saying we are proud of you, it's actually being present for the moments that matter. Those are reasonable requests, Dr. Chen said. How do each of you respond to hearing that? Mom spoke first. I want to give you all of those things. I want to learn how to show up for you the way I should have been doing all along. I want to understand why I found it easier to support Kyle than to support you, Dad said. I think I was threatened by your independence and success. Kyle needed me more obviously, and that felt safer somehow. I want to stop being the person who takes up all the oxygen in every room, Kyle said. I want to be your brother, not your competition for our parents' attention. These weren't the responses I'd expected. I'd been braced for defensiveness, excuses, attempts to minimize what had happened. Instead, I was hearing something that sounded like genuine accountability. But I'd learned not to trust words without actions. The second session, 2 days later, was more intense. Dr. Chen had asked each of us to bring specific examples of times when we'd felt hurt or neglected by the family dynamic. I brought a list. 23 items, dating back to elementary school. The time my parents missed my spelling bee championship because Kyle had a soccer game. The time they forgot my birthday because they were dealing with Kyle's college rejection letters. The time I got a full scholarship to Berkeley and they spent dinner talking about Kyle's part-time job at a video game store. I wrote these down, I said, because I realized I've been carrying them around like stones in my backpack. Every time you chose Kyle over me, I added another stone. By the time graduation came around, I was carrying so much weight that I could barely stand up. I read through the list methodically, watching my parents' faces crumple with each item. Kyle looked physically ill by the time I finished. I had no idea, Mom whispered. I remember some of these events, but I remember them differently. I remember thinking you were fine, that you didn't need us the way Kyle did. That's the problem, I said. You decided I didn't need support instead of asking if I wanted it. You assumed I was okay with being ignored instead of checking in with me. Dr. Chen leaned forward. This is a common pattern in families with high-achieving children. The achieving child is often parentified, expected to be more mature, more independent, more understanding. Meanwhile, the struggling child receives more attention and support because their needs are more obvious. But that's not fair, Kyle said. Sophia achieved more than I ever did. She deserved more celebration, not less. Kyle, Dr. Chen said, what do you think your role was in this family system? Kyle was quiet for a long moment. I was the family project. Everyone was always trying to fix me, help me, save me from consequences. And I let them because it felt good to be the center of attention. And what was Sophia's role? She was. Kyle paused, really thinking. She was the family's success story. The one we could point to and say, see, we're good parents. But we never actually parented her. We just took credit for her success. That hit me like a punch to the chest, because it was exactly right. I had been their trophy daughter, proof of their good parenting, while Kyle had been their actual child, the one who received their time and attention and emotional energy. How does that feel to hear, Sophia? Dr. Chen asked. Validating, I said. And infuriating. Because it means they knew how to parent. They just chose not to parent me. Dad spoke up then. I think we were afraid of you, he said quietly. What do you mean? Dr. Chen asked. Sophia was always so capable, so self-sufficient. She didn't seem to need us the way Kyle did. And honestly, her success made us feel inadequate. Like maybe we were holding her back. Kyle was easier because his needs were obvious and we could meet them. With Sophia, we didn't know how to help someone who was already succeeding. So you stopped trying, I said. So we stopped trying, Dad agreed. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. The third and final session was about moving forward. Dr. Chen asked each of us to make specific commitments to changing our family dynamic. Mom went first. I commit to showing up for Sophia's achievements without being asked. I commit to celebrating her victories without immediately talking about Kyle. And I commit to continuing therapy to understand why I found it easier to baby Kyle than to support Sophia. Dad was next. I commit to being emotionally available to both of my children, not just the one who seems to need me more obviously. I commit to understanding that support isn't just financial, it's emotional and physical presence. And I commit to making amends for all the times I chose convenience over connection. Kyle's commitment was the longest. I commit to becoming an adult instead of staying a child. I commit to supporting Sophia instead of competing with her for our parents' attention. I commit to taking responsibility for my own life so that Mom and Dad can focus on rebuilding their relationship with you. And I commit to being the brother you deserved all along. When it was my turn, I was surprised by what came out of my mouth. I commit to letting you try, I said. I commit to giving you chances to show up differently. I commit to telling you directly when I need support instead of expecting you to figure it out. And I commit to working on forgiveness, even though I'm not there yet. Dr. Chen smiled. Those are all realistic, measurable commitments. Now I want each of you to think about what success looks like. If we met again in a year, what would need to be different for you to feel like this family had truly healed? For me, success would look like my parents showing up to my law school graduation without being asked. It would look like birthday calls that were about me, not updates about Kyle. It would look like Kyle and I having a sibling relationship based on mutual support instead of competition for resources. Success would look like feeling like I belonged in my own family. The sessions ended with a plan for ongoing check-ins, monthly family video calls, individual therapy for each of us, and a commitment to honest communication about what was and wasn't working. I flew back to Boston feeling cautiously hopeful but still guarded. Words in a therapy office were different from actions in real life. But then something interesting started happening. Mom started texting me about my classes, not just house school, but specific questions about my constitutional law professor and my internship at the legal aid clinic. Dad started sending me articles about law school success strategies and networking tips. Kyle started calling me just to check in, not because he needed something. Small changes? But consistent ones. In February, I got a package in the mail from my parents. Inside was a scrapbook they'd made, photos and mementos from all my achievements over the years. My spelling bee trophy. My high school graduation tassel. My Berkeley acceptance letter. Screenshots of positive comments from my viral graduation speech. The note inside read, Sophia, we should have made this years ago. We should have been celebrating you all along. We can't change the past, but we want to honor everything you accomplished, with or without us. Love, Mom and Dad. I cried over that scrapbook for an hour. But the real test came in May, when I was selected to compete in the Harvard Law Review writing competition. It was a big deal. Making law review would be a huge boost to my career prospects. The competition involved a week of intense research and writing, culminating in a presentation to the editorial board. I mentioned it casually during our monthly family video call, not expecting much. 3 days before the presentation, my parents showed up in Cambridge. They didn't ask if they could come. They didn't make a big production about it. They just showed up at my apartment with flowers and a care package and said, "We wanted to be here to support you." They stayed for the entire week, attending my presentation and taking me to dinner afterward to celebrate. They asked thoughtful questions about my research. They met my friends. They acted like parents who were proud of their daughter. It was such a small thing, a week-long visit, some encouraging words, their physical presence during a stressful time. But it felt monumental because it was exactly what I'd been asking for, showing up without being asked, celebrating my achievements, being present for the moments that mattered. I made law review. And for the first time in my life, my success felt like something we all celebrated together instead of something I achieved alone. That summer, Kyle got into a 4-year university. He finished community college with a 3.8 GPA and had been accepted to UC Davis with a partial scholarship. Instead of our parents throwing him a huge party like they would have in the past, they had a quiet family dinner where each of us shared what we were proud of Kyle for. But the biggest change was that Kyle had requested the dinner be a celebration for both of us, him for getting into Davis, and me for making law review. He insisted on sharing the spotlight instead of hogging it. I spent 23 years being celebrated for mediocrity, he told me privately. It's time for me to celebrate you for excellence. During that dinner, Dad raised his glass for a toast. To both of my children, he said. To Kyle, for working hard to become the person he wants to be. And to Sophia, for never giving up on us, even when we gave up on showing up for you. Mom added, and to second chances. To the possibility that families can learn and grow and become better versions of themselves. It wasn't perfect. We were all still figuring out how to be the people we wanted to be instead of the people we'd always been. But it felt like hope. It felt like a family that was finally showing up for each other. 3 years later, I'm in my final semester at Harvard Law School, clerking for a federal judge and applying for positions at top law firms. My parents have been to visit 6 times, not just for major events, but just because they wanted to see me. Kyle finished his degree at UC Davis with honors and is now working at a nonprofit that provides legal aid to undocumented immigrants. We text regularly. We call each other for advice. We show up for each other's victories and defeats. But here's the thing I didn't expect: healing a family doesn't erase the damage that was done. I still have days when I expect to be disappointed. I still have moments when I brace for them to choose Kyle over me. I still carry some of those stones in my backpack. The difference is that now, When I start to carry too much weight, I have people who help me put the stones down. The viral graduation speech will always be part of my story. It's been viewed over 10 million times now, and it still finds new audiences every graduation season. I get messages from students who recognize themselves in my words, from parents who are trying to do better, from families who are working to heal their own dysfunction. But the real story, the one that matters most to me, isn't about the speech that broke my family open. It's about the work we did afterward to put ourselves back together. It's about the choice my parents made to get help instead of getting defensive. It's about Kyle's decision to grow up instead of staying comfortable. It's about my willingness to let them try, even when I had every reason to write them off. It's about the truth that change is possible, even when the damage runs deep. Even when the patterns have been entrenched for decades. Even when the hurt feels insurmountable. But change requires more than viral moments and public accountability. It requires sustained effort, professional help, and the willingness to sit with uncomfortable truths about ourselves. Most of all, it requires the courage to keep showing up, even when showing up is hard. That's the real thread I'm leaving you with, not just that families can break, but that they can also heal. Not just that truth-telling is powerful, but that the work that comes after truth-telling is what actually transforms relationships. The parking lot is empty now, but we're not still standing in it, crying over what was lost. We're building something new. Together.